Coming up on Business Incorporated. According to new charter, Africa requires 15 million jobs created annually to address unemployment crises. Tanzania calls for clearer global consensus on central bank digital currencies. Plus, South Africa's new vehicle sales exceed expectations in March with pent-up demand. Great to have you join us on Business Incorporated. I'm Ladi Williams. Let's take a look at how your money's performing at intraday. Starting in Africa, it was mostly negative. In Nigeria, the NGX index traded in red. It was down about 0.03%. In South Africa, the GSC was the most downbeat with 1.01% retraction. Elsewhere, Egypt's EGX30 dropped by 0.43%, and while Kenya closed 0.23% up on Tuesday. And the Middle Eastern market, it's a slightly different pictures. Indexes are fairly mixed. In the United Arab Emirates, both the Dubai and Abu Dhabi index fell by 0.06% and 0.22%. Elsewhere in the region, the Qatari index added 1.51%, while Saudi Arabia notched up 0.06%. All right, now let's head on to Europe with the European Union pondering new round of sanctions against Russia as the West seeks to make the Kremlin pay amid accusations of war crimes in Ukraine. We have Chris Koba right there in Berlin. Great to have you, Chris. So these new measures are to include a ban on coal imports from Russia. Why is this significant?
Because by boycotting coal deliveries, it would be the first time that the EU directly targets Russia's lucrative energy sector over this war. Now, that is something that European leaders have been trying to avoid so far because the bloc is highly dependent on Russian energy deliveries. For example, the EU as a whole receives around 40% of its natural gas from Russia, with individual member countries in part accounting for a much higher dependency. Germany gets around 50% of its gas from Russia, Austria around 80%. That is why the German government to this day keeps opposing a ban on Russian gas imports, fearing that its heavily industrialized economy would take a major hit. But boycotting Russian coal can certainly be seen as a way of chipping away on this resistance. Now, with the chairman of EU leaders, Charles Michel, saying that the bloc will have to stop importing Russian oil and even Russian gas at some point. The economic impact of a boycott of Russian coal wouldn't be too big. Russian coal deliveries to Europe have an estimated worth of around $4.5 billion a year. But again, it could pave the way to much more far-reaching sanctions in the energy sector. And an import ban of Russian oil and particularly Russian gas would do much greater harm to the Russian state budget and to European economies alike. The new package of sanctions, which needs to be approved by the EU's 27 member states before taking effect, would also ban Russian ships from harbors in the bloc, and it includes other restrictions on trade.
Well, the sanctions keep building there, but what are the reactions to this proposed boycott of Russian coal?
Well, German coal importers say that it is possible to become independent of Russian coal rather quickly. Instead, deliveries could be increased from suppliers like the United States, South Africa, Australia, Colombia, or Indonesia. By doing so, Germany could do without Russian coal by the end of the year. The head of the Association of German Coal Importers says an import ban would not hit companies completely unprepared. Since last fall, there have been supply shortages regarding coal from Russia, and consumers and companies have been looking for alternatives, the lobby group says, which doesn't seem to be too difficult as the world market for hard coal seems to be working well, according to experts. Now, on a political level, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has been saying a boycott of Russian coal wasn't enough. In a video video address to the United Nations, he demanded the West stop all business with Russia's energy sector as a means to increasing pressure on the leadership in Moscow to end this war.
Quite a tough choice to make there. But European stocks sagged, yesterday after Brussels proposed further sanctions against Russia. Give us an update of what's happening today.
The mood has been souring with the prospect of more sanctions against Russia weighing on European shares, not least because the head of the EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, is saying the package in the making will not be the last. And the economic fallout of this war is going to be much greater should the EU decide to turn off the taps on Russian gas. And there are indicators that such a move could become reality in the not too distant future. Add to that persisting concerns about inflation. Fed monetary policy is at the top of the agenda this week as investors fret over how quickly officials will withdraw their vast pandemic-era financial support. Overall, Germany's blue chips index DAX is shedding around 1% in early parts of Wednesday's trading session. And on commodities markets, oil prices keep rising as well.
Right, talk about the power of Russian gas. Thank you so much, Chris Koba, right there in Berlin. All right, let's move on to the UK. As rising oil prices continue to stoke energy costs, governments are struggling to make it easier for households. Let's take a look at what's happening in the UK with Juliana there. Great to have you, Juliana. So the UK government is set to unveil its widely anticipated energy security strategy as households grapple with soaring energy bills. What are the expectations here?
Good afternoon, Laddie. Yes, as you said, the Energy Security Strategy document is highly anticipated and long awaited, actually. It will be released in full by the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, on Thursday. But we were expecting to get it last month, in fact, early last month. But there are some reports and suggestions that perhaps there's a spat between the Business Ministry and the Treasury, because, of course, any new plans are going to cost the British government a lot of money, and there's money that they don't really have. But there are two pressing issues that we expect the document to outline. One, of course, is this ongoing invasion of Ukraine and the dependence on Russia for gas and oil. Now, of course, we know that unlike other countries in mainland Europe, Britain don't heavily depend upon Russia, but of course they're all webbed within the system. So we are going to be expecting details of how they can shift their dependence on Russia on Thursday. And then, of course, as you said, the big topic at the moment, soaring energy bills and the cost of living. Recently, energy bills have risen by 54%, which is a huge amount. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to get better when Ofgem, the energy regulator, talk about that threshold price in September. It's expected to be lifted yet again. So this document that's going to be released on Thursday will outline how households can be shielded from that. We're expecting lots of investment into solar power. We know that when Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, unveiled the spring statement a couple of weeks ago, he did say that the VAT on solar panels in homes will be scrapped for 3 years. Perhaps that is laying the foundations for an announcement on Thursday into more solar power usage. Also, wind power, a little bit of controversy in this country about whether it should be offshore or onshore. So we'll be hearing details on that. And another very controversial term is fracking. Fracking was on top of the news a couple of years ago. Lots of protests because some environmentalists believe it damages the earth and has an increased risk of earthquakes. But without the fracking, it's really difficult for this country to extract gas. So those are all some of the topics that we expect to be outlined on Thursday. But until it's published, we just have to wait and see.
So many tough decisions to make there. But another issue is food. MPs are warning chronic worker shortages in the food and farming sector could push food prices even higher. What are you hearing about this?
Yeah, this is a major topic, looking at the UK's £100 billion food sector, whereas according to industry experts, it's missing about 500,000 people to work in the industry at the moment. This is leading to food in farms rotting. We're also having to cull really healthy animals because there's just nobody to work in the meat processing plants. A lot of MPs are saying this is all to do with Brexit and, of course, COVID, because we know that a lot of seasonal workers went home during the COVID pandemic and they've just not returned. And because of a new Brexit visa rules, seasonal farmers are really struggling to get through the bureaucratic paperwork. So MPs are now calling on the government to do so much more to try and save Britain's food industry. They do not want food processing to be exported out of the UK, which would be cheaper, but then, of course, there'll be less jobs and the food would be less fresh. So the MPs have been sitting on the Environment, Rural and Food Committee, have asked Boris Johnson to tackle this issue urgently because, of course, we are seeing soaring prices away from this agricultural issue. And if you put this issue on top of that, prices could spiral out of control.
It's all about rising prices, the year of the squeeze, they've called it. But how are the markets looking at intraday?
London blue chip index still very much in the red at intraday. The fallers are led by Airtel Africa, still dominating the news here, as well as Royal Mail. Their shares were down at intraday. The FTSE All Share is down 0.42% right now. The FTSE 100 is down by 0.24%, and the FTSE 250, that's down by triple figures, 1.01%. In the currencies market, the British pound is currently down on the US dollar too by 0.02%, down on the euro by 0.03%, but up on the Japanese yen at intraday by 0.21%, Laddie.
Well, I see Airtel Africa is down again. I remember we talked about it last time. But great to have you back, Julian. I hope you enjoyed your holiday.
Yes, it's great to be back. Thank you, Laddie.
All right, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. All right, now let's take a look at other markets. Now we see stock futures dipped for a second day today, with rates soared to new highs as investors bet the Federal Reserve is about to aggressively tighten policy, fight inflation, and turn slow the economy. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell by 0.5%. Futures S&P 500 futures were down by 0.7%, and the Nasdaq 100 index futures shed 1.2%. Well, our correspondent, Maria Bird, gives a recap of yesterday's close.
The U.S. stock market fell on Tuesday as the S&P 500 was down by 1.3%. The Dow Jones was down by 0.8%, and the heavy tech Nasdaq was down by 2.3%. Investors are a bit concerned about the potential assertive measures that may be taken by the Federal Reserve. It is expected that in the next few months, we could see 2 to 3 interest rate hikes trying to curb the inflation in the U.S.
Yeah, so Mary Bird with yesterday's close. All right, so we'll take a break now. When we come back, more stories on the African continent. That's in a moment. Just stay with us. Welcome back now to our next conversation. According to a new charter launch, more than 15 million decent jobs must be created for Africa by 2025 if governments are to be serious about making a dent in its unemployment crisis, with Africa's population expected to double, reach 2.5 billion people by 2050. Africa's jobless youth risks casting a shadow over its economic growth. Well, joining us now is Stanley Achonu, Nigeria Country Director, The One Campaign. Great to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me, Laddie.
Yeah, so quite a big target there, 15 million jobs annually in Africa. What needs to be done to achieve this?
So, Laddie, first, we need to sort of understand the kind of challenge and crisis that we face on the continent. Before the pandemic, according to the Africa Development Bank, Africa needed between 10 to 12 million jobs annually to cater to the very huge population of young people that we have. Unfortunately, we're only able to create 3 million jobs, leaving very large population of our citizens on the continent unemployed or underemployed. And this, poses a huge risk, security challenge. There's a research from the University of Sussex that showed that there is a link between the insecurity we face on the continent to the amount of jobless people we have amongst our young population. So we need to find ways to harness this our young population to be able to even make a dent or even sort of begin to tackle this challenge. Africa, the governments on the continent need to target a minimum of 15 million jobs annually. And this is a tall order, considering that we're currently doing 3 to 4 million jobs annually. So this is threefold increase that they need to tackle on. And to be able to do this, there are specific areas after consultation with our partners, spent 3 months talking to different stakeholders. We have concluded that there are key areas that government needs to start to invest in: manufacturing, agriculture. The creative industry is already booming. And the tech scene is also very low. Entry margin is required for young people to get into it. So there are specific things that government can do to take advantage of these opportunities. And sometimes these things that government need to do doesn't only require investment. It just takes them to lift certain barriers to entry, changing new laws, simplifying processes that allow young people to thrive, making funding and liquidity available, making loans available to young people to be. We're already very creative on the continent. So there are just very, simple things that government can do to help young people on the continent to create the jobs that we want or support our existing private sector to expand. One key area we think that government needs to do more is implementation of the Continental Free Trade Area that has been signed in. There are still a lot of barriers and impediments to full implementation of this trade agreement, but it holds the most opportunity and potential for people on the continent. I think that if the African heads of government meetings under the African Union government put more teeth to some of the things that the trade agreement outlined, we'll be on our way to meeting these targets.
Quite interesting, quite interesting. But talking about the campaign, launched by the One, how's that going to go?
So, like I mentioned, we are in about 7 countries where we have consulted and spoken to stakeholders. In those countries, we spoke to both in and out of government, state and non-state actors to identify specific areas in those markets that can drive growth. So, for instance, in Nigeria, our tech and creative sector is thriving, is employing a large number of people. So, how do we expand opportunities using the Africa Continental Trade Agreement to expand opportunities for those already in the sector to expand the level of work they're already doing? Our movie, our music is already taking on the world. Our fashion is also taking on the world and is already creating opportunities. So what can government do to open up the space for people to export this creativity to other countries? Once I had a friend from Kenya visit Nigeria, and one of the things he said was, "Stanley, I want a Nigerian suit." And when I say Nigerian suit, I don't mean the suit as we know it. It's the Nigerian traditional wear as we see it. And in 24 hours, we were able to do a turnaround and get the person a fit traditional wear. And I got feedback saying, "Oh, I wore this to a wedding and I stole the show from the couple." Wow. So there is a huge opportunity for our creative industry in Nigeria as an example. Imagine what it will mean for our textile and our fashion industry to be able to take on the whole of the African continent and be able to manufacture here and ship to any part of the continent. That intertrade area is one easy area where we can begin to expand and sort of create more jobs. So once there is more demand for our fashion industry, it means that more people will be employed. And I can also imagine other countries, South Africa, Kenya. Kenya has a very big tech scene, and there are skills that other countries and and even beyond the continent can use. When we were doing consultation for this campaign, I was speaking to someone in the tech industry, and the person said, "Stanley, before now, when it comes to online jobs, Nigeria had a very bad reputation. But post-pandemic, there is a huge demand for Nigerian engineers, tech engineers, software developers, data analysts, that there is a huge demand and that he's getting more requests for Nigerian talent than he can actually supply to the market outside of the continent. So imagine what it would take to upskill more people to do remote job for companies based outside of the continent. The foreign exchange will end, the opportunities that it creates for people to build skills and all of that. So those are the kind of little areas that we're saying government needs to sort of take out barriers that prevent people from being creative. And we're not saying government create jobs because, sometimes these jobs created by government are not sustainable. So that's why we're very clear in our charter to say, look, we need government to take out barriers to entry that allows private sector to thrive. And it's only private sector that can create sustainable jobs that can give people decent living.
Quite a lot to export from the African continent. Thank you so much, Stanley Achonu, Country Director, The One Campaign. It was great having you on the program.
Thank you for having me, Elijah.
All right, now let's take a look at what's happening in East Africa. We see Tanzania's top financial sector officials called for a clearer global consensus on central bank digital currencies and crypto assets as the country continues to contemplate the direction to take on the rapidly evolving concepts. Finance and Planning Minister told the regional conference hosted by the Bank of Tanzania and International Monetary Fund that both topics needed more thorough discussions before the country could make commitments, a view that was echoed by the Bank of Tanzania governor. The virtual convention, which continued as it was called specifically for Anglophone countries in sub-Saharan Africa to gain more insight on issues such as financial inclusion and integrity, digital and cybersecurity risk, legal issues, and interoperability in relation to CBDCs and cryptocurrency dealings. And South Africa's new vehicle sales exceeded expectations in March as pent-up demand, normalizing business conditions, and new model choices lured more buyers to motor dealerships. According to data released by NAMSA, domestic new vehicle sales in March stand at 50,607 units and is the highest monthly sales total since pre-pandemic October 2019 sales, and also reflected a 16.5% rise of vehicles sold compared to March 2021. NAMSA says in the face of interest rate hikes, spiking fuel prices, and the ongoing industry challenges of supply, March's new vehicle market provided a lot to celebrate. And South Africa's Department of Mineral Resources and Energy has published the official fuel price adjustments for April 2022, with the price of petrol increasing by 36% per litre and diesel going up by R1.52 per litre. The fuel price adjustments take into account the emergency interventions announced by the National Treasury in cooperation with the Energy Department, whereby the general fuel levy will be reduced by R1.50 until 31st of May 2022. According to the department, the average international product prices for petrol, diesel, and illuminating paraffin increased during the period under review, while the rand appreciated against the US dollar, and these are the main driving factors to local fuel prices. And that's it on Business Incorporated. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. Bye-bye.